Good late evening, everybody. It's Steve with Real Progressives. Late night, out of sequence, you name it. I just felt like it was important to go live tonight. We are watching as everybody is trying to rationalize what the results of the Donald Trump administration mean to them. Watching people jumping here and there. Going through whatever process they have to go through in their own head to kind of get to the other side. And, I'm watching folks, quite frankly, they're spinning their wheels. I mean, this is the hamster wheel of life, if you will, has become, almost a static moment for all of us. We're watching people just spinning and spinning and spinning. And we're literally getting nowhere. I watch this little group will pop up for a minute, then this little group will pop up for a minute, and nobody's staying on message. Nobody's staying on point. And, it's really quite depressing, to be honest with you, because I keep asking, I'm like, okay, there's groups of people out there, all they do is focus on the deep state. Okay, so what are we going to do with the deep state? We're going to just talk about the deep state. We're just going to talk about it. We're going to make a bunch of guesses. We're going to dig through some tweets, maybe some FOIA requests, maybe some hacked emails, whatever. We're just going to talk about the deep state round the clock. Folks, the deep state existed long ago, has always been there. There's always been government employees. There's always been groups, shadow groups. There's always been people pining to get into the halls of power. There's always been people that self-selected their groups, etc. It's always been there. It'll always be there. We get rid of the money in politics, there'll be a new way of dealing with it. So the question I have for you is, how do you stop organizations, groups, etc., from pulling together to influence things? And what exactly is all this talk about the deep state actually doing? I'm trying to find something actionable to do with the deep state, something that we can do other than like feeling like we're reading a good Hardy Boy novel. I don't know what we're doing with it. I've yet to figure out a single actionable thing that comes from this other than just excitement. I don't know. I really don't. I really don't. Tonight, a friend of mine who works at Real Progressives, I'll leave her name anonymous, lost her Medicaid. She has no access to health care right now at all. She's got no income. She's in a very bad state. She's got an illness that I'm not going to disclose just in case you figure out who it is. And she's in dire straits. And to me, we've got a healthcare situation going on that is beyond FUBAR. And we've got an HR 676 bill, even with shitty taxes and crap thrown into it because the people are ignorant. But we've got a real situation going on that impacts people's lives today that is actionable. And yet we've got people chasing after who murdered Chester Bennington of freaking, it's just unbelievable. I mean, no joke. My inbox, I'm constantly getting crap from people sending me nonsense about Chester Bennington was murdered. It's like, okay. But here we've got people that genuinely are very, very sick, don't have health care, are not able to afford their affordable care, already have conditions that require money. There's that stupid word. People, why are you focused on money? That kind of thing. But I'm watching this person. She's a young mom and she's struggling. And people are talking about the deep state, the inactionable deep state, or as I like to call it, the deep stupid. And I just don't understand. If folks, the kinds of changes that we need to make in America, we're not going to be able to vote our way out of this. It's not going to happen because we have a successful election. okay? It's going to be because we all band together and demand whatever. Maybe it's because we demand that we have fair elections. Maybe it's because we demand that they get money out of politics. But it's not going to be because we vote our way into that. It's going to have to be because we as an entity join together and make a demand and have a honest to God consequence for not meeting that demand. Okay? Now, it doesn't matter whether you say, well, we don't have fair elections. None of what you say is good until we have fair elections. Well, fine. How are you getting fair elections when the people that control this are the ones that we're fighting against? Just asking. How are you going to do that? You mean we're going to have to band together and we're going to have to use something other than the election system to make that happen? Sounds interesting. Sounds familiar. And then when I sit there and I say, hey, we need to understand that the nation is not in debt like you and I know it, that we can afford green energy so we don't have to freaking die from an environmental crisis. But then we get rediverted to the deep state yet again. We get rediverted to gibberish that we can't act on, that there's nothing really actionable to do. It always comes back to the fact that the people have to be educated and they have to be united. And they have to understand that it doesn't matter what party you're in. It doesn't matter about green enter, because the Green Party still doesn't have their act together economically. So that means they can't implement their plans at a national level. The Democratic Party sold out, whatever. So we can't rely on the Democratic Party. Yeah, Bernie's on record for trying to reform the Democratic Party, but they're over there peddling the Russian narrative. They're over there stirring up trouble, trying to create a war, putting sanctions on Russia. So they're not going to help us. Republicans sure aren't going to help us. The libertarians, yeah, that's what I thought. It's a joke there too. It's even worse there, actually. So we're going to have to band together yet again, right? Once again, we have to unite and band together to make whatever it is happen. So let's just say hypothetically, we all join some new party, or maybe we join some old party or whatever. And we say, well, we can't really argue about anything because it's really important that we're all united. But what are we united in? What are we actually uniting for? Are we uniting against corrupt elections? Okay, fair enough. Are we uniting because we want my friend not to have to die without health care? Well, that's really something substantive to me. That's something I'm willing to go for too. Are we willing to band together to block this absolute neoliberal scourge that is trying to rip apart our social fabric, our public infrastructure, and privatize everything? Are we willing to band together for that? I don't know if we are or not. I really don't know if we are. But it's very important to understand that the right wing of America has infiltrated the left wing of America and has poisoned it with right-wing Milton Friedman logic. Right-wing Milton Friedman logic that makes us believe that we've got to do really stupid things to achieve anything. If we don't unite around truth, not just unite around uniting for the sake of uniting, one hell of a great party, right? But not a good party. You know, we're talking about, let's go ahead and crack one open and have a party. That's about all that is. But if we don't unite in truth and we don't unite in understanding that we are literally letting people die while we're chasing after the deep state, if we don't realize that we're taking away people's mental faculty, that short little time period that people have to devote to fighting for civilization, if we don't focus it towards real priorities, actionable priorities, and we stop trying to conflate ideas and say, no, you know, they believe this, you believe that. No, it's like, stop equivocating. There is truth. And sometimes it's pretty fucking simple and straightforward what truth is. Sometimes you got to break a few eggs to make an omelet. Not sometimes, you always have to break eggs to make an omelet. So what is this whole concept of just uniting for the hell of uniting about? What good does it do if you're not united and pulling in the same direction? My friend needs health care. I need health care. You need health care. Tell me how the deep state gets us health care. The fact is that we know they're crooked. We know that they're corrupt. We know they're on the take. We know that they got their hands in different cookie jars. Nothing's changed. Chase corruption all day long. But when you tell people, when you throw roadblocks in front of them and you diminish hope by telling them we can't do anything until we end Citizens United, well, shit, that could take forever because now it would take a constitutional amendment to do it, right? What about actually fighting for things that we can achieve today? I mean, this should be pretty simple, but instead we end up stuck with this whole nonsense. And I'm not quite sure I understand it. This is what I think we look more like than anything. I think we look like this, you know? We keep coming up with the same shit over and over again, and we never really get anywhere. And it's because of this fake unity shit that we want. You know, what's the difference between the new version of the progressive unity and the old vote blue no matter who? The reason why vote blue no matter who was such a fiasco was because it told you to ignore corporate kleptocratic Democrats who literally would sell you out for a few campaign dollars or for some favor from a donor. Look at Cory Hooker, prime example. I mean, we have to get off the hamster wheel to move forward. Otherwise, we stay in place. We have to do something a little different. This whole unity for the sake of unity thing is of no purpose whatsoever. It serves zero purpose. You know, and this whole living off the grid thing, I mean, look, hey, man, to each their own, but let me tell you something. This one cracks me up. We've got to stay engaged in the fight. And the thing is this, right? It doesn't matter whether we can vote our way in. It really doesn't. It doesn't matter if we unite on the day of election day, because ultimately, if you don't believe the elections are fair, no matter what comes out of the election is going to be illegitimate in your mind, even if there's nothing there, or if there is something there, it's illegitimate. So what do we have? We have the issues. We have the issues we agree upon. It doesn't matter about the party. We have this issues, this block of issues. Most of those issues the Green Party supports. Most of those issues progressives that still live in the Democratic Party support. And then the same thing with independents. Most of those issues these independents support. So if we stop waiting for a party to save us, if we stop waiting for party unity to save us, and we stop waiting for 2018 to find the next batch of idiots to save us, and we take action today And we live in a democratic world where we walk down the streets together fighting for this pool of ideas that we all agree on. And we don't sit there and elevate, one thing at a time. Hey, we'll do this one thing now. We'll do this one thing now. No. We take a bundle, this bundle right here, and we say, serve us. And you know what? That means serve us Donald Trump. That means serve us Republican Congress. That means serve us Republican Senate. That means serve us Republican governors. That means serve us whoever is in power. It doesn't make a difference. Because if elections are no good, and you can't elect your way in there, remember the circular argument, the give-up strategy, the progressive give-up strategy? If you can't win by electing people to get you in there, you have to do something different. Going off the grid doesn't do anything. It just keeps the power in the hands of those people, that have the power. And then let's talk about this. We're going to go ahead and we're going to try and get third parties up on the debate stage. Well, guess what? The two parties, the very people that don't want that to happen, are the ones in control of making it happen. So how are you going to make them do it? You're going to vote them out and make it happen? No. You must band together to force that issue. And it has to be large numbers. It cannot be people sidelined with the deep state. It requires us banding together and taking over town halls, taking over our local media, taking over Congress, taking over the Senate, taking over the streets, and demanding it. Peacefully demanding it. But this goes for every single one of these issues. Every single one of them. You cannot vote your way to victory at this point, folks. And let's say you could. Do you see enough pressure from progressives banding together in unity to force them to behave? I do not. I just purged like 40 people from my friends list just because I got tired of seeing their Cheeto in Chief posts. I got 5,000 slots. They're precious to me because everybody on there I want to matter. I want to use this as a tool to win. I don't want to just use it so I can be social. I'm using this to amass people that want to make change. So if you're sitting there dicking around with Cheeto and Chief posts and already talking in 2017 about you're going to vote Democrat no matter who in 2020, you're gone. I'm purging you. You're out of here. You're not, I don't want to see your shit in my timeline. I just don't want to see that. If you're focused on Kamala Harris and you're focused on Elizabeth Warren and wondering whether they would make a good president, I probably have already purged you because you're not doing anything valuable. You're already sidelining. So you're not talking about issues. You're talking about Democrat versus Republican. I got no time for that. Who's got time for that? I don't have time for that. And, I think that when I think about this, people ask me in particular, excuse me, I'm snuffy, but people keep asking me again and again why we talk about economics so much. And let me ask you this question. I will say this 1,000 times because it's necessary. If a new political party tells me that they want to take over because they are the right vehicle to take on the oligarchy or whatever, I need assurances that that party is going to leverage the system as it is today because we don't have 50 years to wait for them to amass enough power to overthrow the system, to overthrow tyranny, to overthrow everything, fascism, kick them, boot them, whatever. I don't have 50 years to wait to get health care in America. I don't have 50 years to wait to get student debt relief. I don't have 50 years for green energy. The planet may, but you and I do not, because we are easily wiped off the face of the earth. The planet will stay intact. It just won't be too good for human beings. I, for one, don't want to be taking my life into my own hands every time I cross a bridge somewhere in the United States because we can't figure out how to pay for an infrastructure bill. It's never about the issues, folks. It's never about the issues. The reason why people dumb down the bills that they do is because they can't quite figure out how to pay for it. Granted, there's special interest reigning on the whole thing the whole time. But for us little people, how many times have you seen people just fall in love with some bill? It's not like they say, no. That bill doesn't come close to what we need. We need healthcare as a right in America. We don't need managed insurance. We need healthcare in America. See, this is what happens when you divorce yourself from parties. It doesn't mean you don't vote. You vote for whoever you feel like you can vote your conscience with. But the point has nothing, this has nothing to do with voting. This has to do with making demands of whoever's in office. You know, this is weird. I don't know if people realize this or not. But did you know that even if a Republican is your congressman or senator, did you know that for the term that they're elected, they are your congressman and senator? Did you know that they are your representative, whether you like their party or not? That means you have to treat with them. That means you have to go to them. And that means you have to shake their cage. That means you have to knock on their door, write them letters, show up at their office, show up at their town halls, even if you don't like them. And even if you do like them, you have to do the same thing. This should not be rocket science, and yet I see people feeling despair. We can't do anything because the system's rigged. It's this, it's that, it's the other. It's the progressive give-up strategy. It allows people to feel edgy, fist in the air, but making zero progress in actually changing anything. Now, I don't know about you all, but I'm going to bring this back up because this, my friends, is what my life is not going to be about. It's not going to be about this. I am absolutely done with this shit. Are you all done with this? I mean, come on. I mean, this right here is exactly what we go through every single day that somebody asks us the stupid question, how are you going to pay for it? Right there. The poor lady running on the damn hamster wheel. And every single cycle. Folks, let's go down memory lane for a minute. Let's go down memory lane. You got Bernie Sanders and the shill on the debate stage. And Bernie Sanders says, we're going to pay for it with a Wall Street speculation tax. Which is bullshit, but he said it. And Hillary's like, you basement dwellers, it's pie in the sky. There's no way we can do such broad thinking. You can't think that big. There's no way. It's pie in the sky. Here in the real world, we have to do things. And that, my friends, is the standard message from Democrats. That's the standard message from Democrats. Why is that? Because Democrats are owned by Wall Street. And what does that mean? That means that Wall Street depends on you and I being in debt so that they can make money. That means that they need us destitute. And that means that they're hoping that there isn't public policy space, that we are forced to go into private debt to finance situations. Situations we don't need to finance, like my friend's health care. We keep running on the stupid hamster wheel, and we wonder why we never get anywhere. And the question every single time, Hillary, think about her cackling. That cackle. Come on, you know the cackle, you know the smile, you know the gaping mouth. Every single time, how are you going to pay for it? Every single time, how are you going to pay for it? And then now all of a sudden, everybody wants to, well, we got to regroup. We got to think about it. We got to pontificate. We got to consider. We got to go through the process. We've got to be inclusive. We need this group to tell us their needs, and we need this group to tell us their needs. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what their needs are. How are you going to pay for their needs? You can't legislate me liking you. You can't legislate me liking you or you liking me. But the things you can legislate require money. They require understanding federal financing, period. Or you're on the hamster wheel yet again. For those people that like being on the hamster wheel, there's your hamster wheel. I don't want to be on the hamster wheel. I want to make progress. So, I don't know if you guys see it the way I do, but I keep thinking to myself, if we're going to have this constant dialogue of how are you going to pay for it, it might be a good idea if we understood this answer to how you're going to pay for it, right? Would it not make sense to learn how we're going to pay for it? We all know we need infrastructure. What's the debate? Folks, what the fuck is there to debate? The bridges are rated D-, D+. Every time you drive across one, you're taking your life and your family's life into your hands. What do we need to debate? We need to debate how to pay for it. Healthcare is a right. Some ridiculous amount of people, including Republicans, want Medicare for all. And that's not even good enough. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, even they want Medicare for all. What's stopping us? How are you going to pay for it? Right? How are you going to not cost all these jobs in the private sector insurance companies? That's kind of a fair statement. No matter what you think about the industry, the people working in them are human beings. They're your neighbors. They're your family, right? This is all easy stuff. It really isn't that difficult if you know how to pay for it. There are ways to do a bunch of things to keep people whole, to build bridges, to build transition strategies. Folks, if you are in business and you're in executive management, I know it's taboo in the left to be in executive management, but occasionally we do arrive there. But think about this for a minute. You got to do an organizational change. You're restructuring the way you do business. You're creating a new division. You're adding new processes. You have transition strategies. You have an organizational change management map. You go through the process of bringing people into the new world. Why is it that we can't do that governmentally when we X out an industry? Hey, you know what? We don't want student loan industry to be around anymore. We're going to eradicate it. Thousands and thousands of jobs will be lost if we do that. We need to find a transition strategy so those people are not left destitute. We keep them whole. That's not rocket science. But the question will be, how are you going to pay for it? Then you think about green energy. Well, shit. Green energy is not just a good check mark on the old greening of the whatever. No, this is like a necessity. If we don't change to that, not only will this world collapse, but so will all the economies around the world when we get to a point where we're in a scarcity situation for oil. We're going to need to find alternative sources, make them readily available, and we need to do it in a renewable fashion that saves the planet. We need to do it yesterday, not in 30 years, not in 20 years, now. How are you going to pay for it? How are you going to make, and I know you don't like the oil companies, and I know you don't like the CEOs with their golden parachutes and all that good stuff, but if the goal is to keep the planet inhabitable, How are you going to pay for it? We might have to figure out something that doesn't look as sexy as we like just to keep human life sustainable on this planet. I know this may sound crazy, but we can afford it. We really can. And we need to think big. We cannot keep thinking small. And then the next part of this, student loans and free college for all. I mean, think about it. How are you going to pay for it? Look at them nickel and diming around the edges in these state-based programs. Needless to say, states are not monetarily sovereign, which means states can go bankrupt, which means when states do bold initiatives like this, it can really fuck their bottom line up. There should be no more unfunded mandates to the states. The government should be, federal government should be covering every mandate it issues. It should cover free college for all. Hell, use the 14th Amendment. I don't care. But it's going to come down to the question of how are you going to pay for it? Don't you want to be able to answer how you're going to pay for it? I mean, think about it. Think about it for a second. I mean, this is the stuff that we should really be thinking about, right? I mean, you got to let go of the world in the way that you think you know it and think big. Start embracing a better. Can you imagine back in the day when we went to war? Oh, wait a minute. Back in the day. That's right. We've never had an issue of finding money, have we? So we shouldn't have an issue finding money for the people either. We won't, because we don't have to find money. Guys, I don't know if you realize this. I'm going to tell you something that's going to cause you a moment of confusion, but I'm just going to tell you right now. The federal government neither has nor has not dollars. They neither have them nor do not have them. The federal government writes instructions and says, we need money. And out of thin air, those instructions are keystroked into existence. The government neither has money nor doesn't have money. It's never broke, ever. This is the toughest thing in the world for people to understand, but it's the easiest thing when you really sit back, drop some acid, do something, think about it. Let your guard down for a minute and just think, wow, how do they get money? Do they borrow it from the People's Bank of China? It's just stupid. So you got to ask yourself again, how are you going to pay for it? And it's simple. It really is simple. This is not hard. The hardest part of this is divorcing your idea of a household budget with that of the federal government that neither has means nor doesn't have means, but wrote the dollar into law. It created the dollar out of law, out of thin air. The rules that it controls the dollar by are all written by law. The dollar is a concept. The dollar is a score. The dollar is a tax credit, an unpaid tax liability. That's it. So running out of these check marks, these dollars, these tallies, these scores is silly. We will never run out of them, and it's not printing money. I don't know if you heard me say this or not, but we're not cranking the printing press. We're keystroking it, right? So why would this be remotely difficult for a new progressive party to understand, an old progressive party to understand, or the people at large to understand? If we want to take on the oligarchs, if we want to take on this feudal society that's brewing, if we want to take on the liars and the gaslighting, the reason why all these commercials that are paid for, all this Citizens United stuff that makes people see commercials and they go, oh my God, Cory Booker's really a good guy, isn't he? That's easily beatable if we're not worrying about that and we're focused on the issues. If we tune that shit out and we focus on the issues and we show up ready, we ask experts to join us in our march. We ask experts to join us in putting together materials. We band together in great numbers. And we stop allowing people to say, well, it's hurting the value of my dollar. Whatever. I mean, we start using our brains and we start learning and we start banding together and we stop worrying about who you're going to vote for in 2020. Is there anything more disgusting than the charade that we now know is the presidency? I mean, right now what it comes down to is us. You know what? Bernie had it right when he said, not me, us. And Bernie had it right even more so when he said, don't listen to me. If I ever tell you who to vote for, don't listen. A lot of people listened, didn't they? A lot of people took him at his word and listened and went ahead and did whatever. But a lot of us didn't. A lot of us said, not me, us, and we kept it going. And I'm keeping it going. Because really, it's going to take massive numbers. And it can't just be little pockets of edgy lefties here and pockets of little edgy lefties there and, you know, anarchists here and libertarians there. It's got to be the left. And it's got to be even the other folks. It's got to be the 99%. And if we stop focusing on parties and start focusing on the core batch of issues, we might just be able to do this. I believe we can do it if we do this. But my purging of my Facebook friends is but a small symbolic gesture to show you that I'm very fucking serious. I don't want to waste time anymore with low life. People that are just bouncing around in nothing land, talking about Cheeto-Lini and stuff like that. I don't. And God knows the people that bring up the Rothschilds, I have begun blocking en masse. I just don't have any interest in losers anymore. I don't want to be around losers. I want to be around people that are really fighting for people living and doing actionable things. Talking about the Federal Reserve, the scorekeeper, and making that the holy grail. It's not, that's a loser's mindset. That's the opposite of a winner. That right there is the kind of stuff that will sideline us and make it so that we get nowhere. The unity that we need comes in understanding, uniting around the issues, and taking it to the streets. And I'm not just talking about marching and shit like that. I'm talking about literally going to your senator, to your congressman, to your governor, and telling them point blank, this is what we need, and this is how you need to do it. And do it over and over again. Don't just do it one time and say, well, I did my part. It requires a constant pressure to make it happen. Anyway, with that, I'm going to let you guys go to sleep. I'm Steve Grumbine. I hope you learned something. Please bond together on issues and forget the noise. I'm out of here. Have a great night, everybody.